All right, and welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga Community. I'm your host, Guru Nishan, and I started this podcast for several reasons and intentions, rather, and I'm going to share them at the beginning of every podcast. So, number one, to break the veil of silence that has long permeated and continues to strangle the 3HO Kundalini Yoga Community in the name of neutrality. Number two, to validate and help clarify the complex feelings of those who have joined this lifestyle, were born and raised into it, and or who have practiced or taught Kundalini Yoga. Number three, to encourage active listening to uncomfortable conversations from our community as a revolutionary act of self and collective healing. Number four, to let survivors know that we see them, we believe them, we love them, and we will fight for their truth to be addressed. Number five, to let teachers who are denying, gaslighting, or spiritually bypassing know that what they are doing is willfully ignorant and re-traumatizing victims. Number six, to illuminate the inherent racism, homophobia, cultural misappropriation, and exploitation that perpetuates the teachings, 3HO lifestyle, and overall community ethos. Number seven, to stop the perpetuation of gaslighting and victim shaming by naming it for what it is. Number eight, to dismantle internalized shame, guilt, toxic positivity, and lightwashing mentality. Number nine, to honor all of the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten or silenced. Number 10, to honor every body that has come through our community, both named and unnamed. Number 11, to encourage people to do their own research, process their own emotions, get somatic therapy and other therapy or other support as needed, draw your own conclusions, and be critical thinkers rather than just blindly follow anyone. Please remember that your story matters. Please share it when you're ready. We're here to listen and support you. On today's episode, I want to welcome our guest, Nirinjan Kaur Khalsa. She was born in 1988 in Vancouver, BC, to her mother, father, and older sister, who are practicing Sikh and Kundalini yoga-oriented family. She took Kundalini yoga teacher training in 2001 and then went to MIri Piri Academy in India for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, graduating in 2006. Many of us in the Kundalini Yoga community will know her as a singer. She's released her first musical album, Aquarian, in 2007, made as a mantra music to accompany the Kundalini Yoga practice of morning Aquarian Sadhana. Over the next 13 years, she also released 4 more spiritually oriented albums specific to Kundalini Yoga and did several tours and plans to make more music in the future, branching out into broader musical genres, less specific to Sikh or Kundalini Yoga oriented content. She's married to Siri Amrit Singh, who was also born and raised as a Sikh in the Kundalini Yoga 3HO community. And together they have 2 sons, raising their family in Vancouver. She has recently started an astrology-based life coaching practice out of her home in Vancouver. So I want to say I'm very excited to connect with you here. We were both obviously born and raised in the Dharma in 3HO Kundalini Yoga. But I don't know you. I just know you as someone who was also born in the community, and I've listened to your music as a practitioner and a person who loves morning sadhana and has chanted along with Aquarian Sadhana on many a mornings with you. So I'm grateful to meet you in this way.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to finally like actually meet you too. Because yeah, like I mean, we've never actually met face to face. We messaged like a little bit on Facebook and stuff, but yeah, not face to face. And it's so I listened to your the podcast you did with Hargobind, and that was so lovely because he's a dear friend of mine, and you know he was in my class at MIri Piri Academy, and so. It was so beautiful to like hear his story, especially because I was there for a lot of it and seeing it from the outside. It was so beautiful to hear him telling it from the inside, and I was so impressed with the way you just conducted that whole interview and the way all that went. I was like, oh, goodness, Sean's so cool. And so that was so lovely. And I was really happy when you asked me to do this. I was like, yeah, of course.
Well, yeah, how awesome. Thank you. Because, you know, similar to when I spoke with Hargobind, I had never met him, and we didn't have a conversation before. It wasn't like a pre, and so you and I haven't either. This is the first time we're really ever talking or meeting. And
Yeah.
that's exciting, you know, because you have a whole lens and a whole world that I have no idea about, and I've just only witnessed you like almost as like the yoga student looking up to my musicians of my Kundalini yoga family, you know. And to be really honest, like your music, out of all of our music in our tradition, has touched me in a way that always brought me back to my center and really supported me at really specific times. And it's one of the reasons I love a sadhana practice and things like this. So when you and I dialogued a little bit was since all of this has broken open. And so I guess I want to start there because that's why we've been interacting at all. Why do you feel it's important to speak out and share your story at all right now?
You mean after everything broke open?
Yeah.
After the nut was cracked, so to speak?
Yes.
Well, I think I love the intro that you gave, and I'm really just feeling the importance of everyone like speaking to their actual experience that they had. You know, when you open up to what's on the inside, you know, it's like I think sometimes as human beings we can assume that everybody else is a mind reader, or you know, it's like, oh, that must be obvious that I'm feeling this way. It must be obvious that I had the experience that I had. Duh, can't you tell? It's like, no, nobody knows it unless you say it.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, the importance that your lens is yours, unique to you, and it's important, and your experiences matter.
Oh,
You know?
thanks. Yeah, I do feel that. Thank you for that, and yeah, it's beautiful to like, you know, I found, you know, just with my astrology life coaching practice that I just started, it's been beautiful just connecting with people because it's really taught me, it's connecting with people in that way and hearing from people and hearing about their life. And because, you know, it's like some people that I've worked with, it's people that I kind of known from the outside, but never really spoke to. And it's like just so moving and amazing to hear from people how they are and what's going on the inside. Because it's just like, oh my God, wow, we really, you know, the whole of, you know, humanity and the whole of everything is just made is a sum of its parts. And if we don't hear from all the parts and we don't hear what's going on inside all the parts, then we have no idea what the hell the whole is.
Right. And we can't heal the whole, right? We have to heal the
The
part
parts.
so that we
Yeah,
can support the whole.
totally. I love that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. you know, I don't even know where to begin. I guess I want you to bring us back, because for me, like, I'm so curious. I'm so curious how, like, what's going on for you now. And I want to understand how you got to the now, you know? So before I even ask you about like what's going on, like in your mind now, like, tell us, you know, give the listeners some context of you growing up in the community and how you became a recording artist of our community, and, you know, and what that means. And then like what the context of your family, like all of that would help, you know?
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. So I tend to be a bit of a talker. So I'm going to like exert effort to like focus, like stay on track. So I don't
Okay,
like
well,
drift off into
well,
detail.
let's start here. Is that you,
Okay.
as a recording artist, you've done a lot of recording specific to Kundalini yoga and our tradition, and your family specifically has a context within the teachings and the content creation, and it's like all of
Mhm.
that supports our listeners to really give a context of who you are, and then how which lends to, you know, where you're at right now. So yeah,
Okay.
so born and raised, let's start there.
Okay. Born and raised. So yeah, I was born here in Vancouver, BC, where I'm at now. I actually live on the same block as the house I grew up on, not in the same house, but on the same block. So where I am right now is pretty much where it all started. And yeah, I was born very early. I was born like 3 months premature. So I kind of, when I look back at my life, like I didn't have much trauma myself growing up. You know, I was very protected and um, I don't know. I was just very, nothing really crazy ever happened to me. Even in India, I was like, oh, that was fun. That, you know, nothing, it just happened to be that way, that I didn't have any like kind of abusive experiences, particularly, though I like totally honor and cry with, and my heart is like just right with everyone who has, and so much compassion and empathy there. I just, that was how my life was. I didn't have much traumatic stuff, physically traumatic or emotionally, not so much as I was growing up. I like to think that kind of a lot of my life trauma was focused in my first 3 months, my birth, because I was born with a twin sister, and but we were both so premature, and she passed away like 12 hours after we were born. Yeah, so you know, it was kind of like birth and death were kind of one experience for me, and I was touch and go when, you know, it was touch and go for me when she you know, when we were babies. Like she passed away and I almost died like many times, just as my life was kind of touch and go there for a while. So, and they also had to do heart surgery on me to like close a valve thing, and it was crazy. So I was just like this little baby with this giant scar laying in this like incubator. And so, you know, that's pretty much the epitome of like a traumatic, rough entry. Um, but my
Wow.
parents, yeah, so my parents took beautiful care of me though. They loved me so much, and they really did everything they possibly could to give me the best care that they could. And they were warriors at the time, making sure, you know, they like touched me, like touched my body and helped me, kept me healthy and gave me enough physical contact. And my mom like fought tooth and nail for the doctors to give me her breast milk, and because at the time that was like not allowed. And so they even had like a little tape deck, you know, like an 80s tape deck, you know, that they stuck into my incubator and would play like mantras for me in the incubator, and just yeah, and like nourished me in like every single way that they knew how, and gave me like just so much of their prana, their energy, their time, their love. And so that was big. And then, you know, from there on out, I mean, it was kind of like, that was kind of like it, you know, it kind of was like uphill from there. You know, it was just like everything was great. Like I had a beautiful childhood and raised in Vancouver, and it wasn't really an ashram. The house we lived in had been an ashram earlier on when my sister was young. And there was a lot of you know, uncomfortable conversations, worthy stuff that happened, but if that's her story to tell,
Can
but that was,
you
that was before I was born. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
tell us who your parents are and who your sister, like give us
Oh,
the,
sure. Yeah. Context. Yeah. My mother is GuruRaj Kaur. She um, she's always lived here in Vancouver, but she's been on a lot, she's a graphic, what do you call it? Not designer, but like graphic, she says typesetter, but I feel like that's like an 80s term. But she's basically done like the kind of graphic like design and putting together of all, and like editing and putting together of a lot of the text for like all of the Aquarian teacher manuals. People, listeners who have, taken teacher training and looked at the manuals, you might see my picture in a lot of them. I did a lot of kind of demonstrating meditations and postures and stuff like that. That was mostly due to my proximity to my mom. Like I was there, so so she's like, "You model it," and
yes.
and
I have
huh?
right. I have the books, Kriya books, and all sorts of manuals, and I see all sorts of pictures of you, and all sorts of many people I know. So yes,
Yeah, lots of different models. Yeah, and like lots of people who lived in Espanola.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, oh look, there's
Your mom
City Chandra. Look,
basically was responsible for a lot of the content material
yeah,
creation of all the Kundalini yoga materials.
yes, that's right. And my dad is a teacher as well. He's like the manager, the general kind of manager at Yoga West here in Vancouver, the Kundalini Yoga studio here in Vancouver, and he has been for many, many years. And he teaches like several times a week. He has for many, 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 many years. He's also a music producer. He produced Aquarian, the Sadhana album that I made. So I made it with him, recorded and produced, and I recorded it with him, and he produced it. And so that was kind of a father-daughter project, that album. It's very
Okay.
sweet. And my sister kind of, she's kind of been all over the place and done a lot of things, and she teaches Kundalini yoga, but she's a very, very open-minded, very I wouldn't, it's like, I would say she considers herself a Sikh, I suppose, but she doesn't wear a turban necessarily. She teaches Kundalini yoga, but she's very open with everything, and she's a beautiful, beautiful person. And her name is Omkar,
And
and
she's how many years difference?
older than me. Like she's like 14 years older than me, so that makes her like, I guess, like 46 now, I suppose.
She went to GNFC.
She went to GNFC. Yeah, she has her own whole. Definitely could have her own. She has her own whole
Yeah,
story to tell.
but just
But,
in just a context
but yeah,
for the listener.
yes, for sure. Yeah. She went to GNFC many, many years ago. I think she was like, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10, something. She was pretty young. And so she, and then it was beautiful growing. It was not, like I said, my house that I lived in was an ashram when my sister was growing up. But by the time I came around, it wasn't an ashram anymore. We have 2 different fathers, by the way. She had another father, so technically we're half sisters. But by the time my mom remarried my dad, it wasn't an ashram anymore, my house, and it was just our family home. And we had a garage out back that served as like, the community, a bit of a community hub. The community would sometimes come and do meditations back there, and we'd have some Gurdwara ceremonies back there. And so it was like a quasi community space sometimes, but
Yes.
it never felt like, it didn't feel like my house was an ashram. Like it was my family home. I felt safe there, protected there, happy there, amazing memories growing up. My mom would we would go on trips together to Disneyland, and like all kinds of I remember we'd always go to Baisakhi in LA, the Baisakhi celebration in LA every year, and then that was fun because I get to see my LA friends, and then after we'd go to Disneyland, and it was like amazing. And and then but I went to a regular just school, Montessori school, growing up. I didn't really, I was very connected in with the Indian community here. It's a huge Indian Sikh community here in Vancouver. I'm still reasonably connected in with them. But my mom, when I was growing up, she was always going to Surrey. That's kind of like the Indian Sikh hub here. Always going to Surrey, going to Surrey. It's like 45-minute drive from where we live here in our neighborhood. And always just playing kirtan and just, teaching the little like Sunday school kind of thing to the Indian Sikh community. I still meet people to this day that are like, older than that are like 10 years older than me or around my age. Oh yeah, you GuruRaj Kaur, your mother. Oh my God, she made such a difference in my life. She inspired me. She made me feel like I just love your mom. She just did so much for me. And I still, to this day, I've heard that story so many times. Oh, I remember you when you were just like 3 years old. And she used to take me to kirtans and I would like sit there playing with my toys while she was like chanting and teaching Kundalini yoga. And she was she was very integrated in the kind of global Indian Sikh community. She taught Kundalini yoga and she was in the Kundalini world, but she was more than most 3HO Sikh people. She was very, very integrated in the Indian Sikh community.
Interesting.
And she was, and so I've always been grateful to have grown up in that way, that I wasn't only grown up in this very 3HO specific ashram. I was also exposed to the Indian Sikh community, and also, I went to just a regular school that I just was, there was like a lot of Chinese kids in my class, and as there's a big Chinese community here in Vancouver, and just there's like Middle Eastern kids in my class, and just regular, just Caucasian, white Canadian kids, and like Japanese and Korean and Indian, and there's just reasonably multicultural, mostly Asian and Canadian, community here in Vancouver. But it was I felt like it was a very integrated growing up that I had. It felt like it wasn't like my only friends were Sikh kids or other 3HO kids. Like I was just with everybody, and used to go on lots of play dates and just go to people's houses and experience their cultures. And so I didn't feel like I had a repressed childhood. I was very free, and my mom and dad just always loved me and supported me to just do what I wanted to do. And they tried to get me to wear my turban to school, and I had a rishi knot, of course, and I have like this very frizzy Greek hair. So when I was a kid, it was like up in this like giant like rishi knot with this just like flang of like frizzy like curls. I remember my hair was just always messy.
I remember that. I remember my rishnat, and then what I had was all the new growth, the new growth that was just becoming in, that just wouldn't fit into the rishnat yet,
Yes, exactly. And it's just like sticking out in these like awkward, like frizzy bits just all around your head. Totally. And I never wanted them to, like, I hated combing my hair. It was such a thing and it hurt. And my parents would have to like sit me down in front of like a show that I would like want to watch and be distracted. And I remember having to like comb my hair, and it was like, they were great about it. I mean, they were very kind and loving about it, but it was just this stress fest, like when I was little, like having to deal with the long hair. And but that's kind of all of our story with our long hair. It's like all as a kid, and but and I always liked to be a tomboy, and I always wanted to wear like sweatpants and like tie my sweatshirt around my waist. And I remember kids used to think that I was a boy. I remember that was a thing. And are you a boy or a girl? They'd like ask me, because the rishi knot, I would dress like a tomboy, and the rishi knot is like non-gender specific, right? So they couldn't tell if I was a boy or a girl. And I remember hating that. I'm a girl. But at the same time, I was kind of tomboyish, and I was just really in my body and really like loved to climb and play imagination games, and like, it was beautiful, and I felt loved and safe my parents, and it was a beautiful childhood, beautiful upbringing. And
So it
when I
sounds
was,
like what I'm hearing is a
yeah,
couple things. Is I'm hearing, so you were born and raised in Vancouver, and your mom was quite I don't know if prominent's the right word, but in terms of,
prominent. Oh, totally the right word. Yeah.
okay, your mom's prominent in the Kundalini Yoga community and is integral in the interfaith as well, you know, because she's a musician, and so she's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, she's recording herself and playing herself. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but also, like you're saying, that helping to the content creation of their manuals, and that they're distributed through. So is she actually working with KRI and with the actual companies of 3HO?
Yes.
Can you give us some understanding of that? Because I don't fully get that yet. Like, I know that you're going to school, like you're going to good Montessori schools, you have access to good quality levels of education because your mom has a level of prominence and relational privilege, if I might add, of
Mm-hmm.
in relation to the organizations of 3HO Kundalini Yoga. Yes?
Yeah, for sure. And she also, yeah, for sure. And my dad, I mean, in terms of like financial well-being and stuff like that, my dad,
And your
um,
experience. So, I mean, that's what I mean about,
oh,
like I want to frame that it's okay to have a wonderful childhood, and like it
yeah,
doesn't have to be juxtaposed against somebody else's trauma,
yeah,
right?
you're right,
And
you're right.
I hear that a little bit, but it's not, in a way, I think it's because the conversations can be very heavy and dense, but it's
Mhm.
important to remember that so much of our communities really added so much value to a child's life in a lot of ways, which I'd like to
Mhm.
hear more of. Like, as a mother,
Mhm.
you had kids within the community and within the lifestyle. And what
Mhm.
does it mean to be a child of a prominent family in a 3HO context, if that makes sense?
Oh,
Because your
yeah,
parents were essentially the heads of Vancouver.
yeah.
They're respectable and successful in their domain, and they
Mhm.
run the show in that region
Yeah.
and connect to the head organizations of all the teacher trainings, all
Mhm.
of the maybe gurdwaras, maybe music, maybe a
Mhm.
bunch. And so if you can frame that for us, it gives us a sense of why your childhood might have been awesome as you're explaining it is.
Well, I mean,
Does that
I
make sense,
mean,
Bill? You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean that, yeah, that they were very prominent, and I definitely, there was a lot of kind of, um, it might sound kind of weird. I hope it's not misunderstood, but there was a bit of a princess vibe that I grew up with, almost as if my mom and dad were a little bit like the king and queen, and I was like the the Kundalini 3HO princess of Vancouver growing
Okay.
up. And not in a like, but in a very
Just
real
honor.
kind of experience of what that would be like, with the negative side and the positive side, meaning like I was just I was always fawned over, by all the like Auntie G's, the Indian Auntie G's, and oh look, you're so beautiful in your little turban, and the pinching of the cheeks, and like, you know, I would, she would dress me up in my turban and my bana and take me, to these um, gurdwaras and everything, and I would just be in my little like 3HO princess wear, right? With my beautiful little white dress and my turban, and my mom was sitting on stage, and I'm I'm her daughter,
Yeah.
and so, I was given, so, I've been working with this amazing therapist recently, and I'll open up very personally about this because I feel it's valuable. She was like, listen, you, since you were born, you were given like 300% love. You have to understand this. She's like, you lost your sister. Your parents gave you like 200% of their love because you survived, right? And then my mom bring, you know, I'm raised in this community where they're like these leaders of this community, and the community adores on me, right? They're like, oh my God, yes, you're so beautiful. This, and then when I started singing, it was like, oh my God, your voice is so beautiful. Yes, we love you. Yes, come sit up with your mother. Yes, we want to see more of you. Yes, yes, yes. Just so much, so much, so much love, which was actually beautiful because they were, you know, it was me. They were seeing me. I was just being myself, you know, so it was beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it. But I also got used to that level of love and attention, thought that that was normal.
Right.
And so there is a bit of a shadow side to growing up thinking that that level of love and attention is what one should expect from the world. Because when I go into reality, you know, as I've been descending more into like reality, which is totally my choice. I love it. I'm like, oh, thank God, coming into like reality. It's a bit of a process. Like, well, it's like when I'm not given like 300%, I'm kind of like, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? Oh my God, if I'm not given 300% of that love and attention, what's wrong? I must be doing something wrong. I must be ugly. Oh my God, there must be something so wrong with what I'm doing and what I am. I gotta, oh God, I kind of would like turn in on this like shame, kind of twisty, like there's something wrong.
Mm.
And I kind of have been realizing lately as I've been working with my therapist, like it was a beautiful upbringing, so much love, but also, you know, it's like when actually faced with real interacting in regular real relationships, in the sense that people don't care to give me 300%, which is totally fine, as it should be. You know, it's like I then have to come to it and be like, no, like it's not because there's something wrong with me. It's because everyone's having their own real experience. And you know, I actually, that true intimacy and true connection and true love is actually witnessing that, you know, with no expectation of what that means for me or whatever. You know, it's like love is not you know, coming up and being the perfect, you know, golden white princess, you know, and offering the best of what I could possibly offer. And even with my music, like as you said in the beginning, it's so touching for you, right? It's like, oh, if someone isn't touched by me, that must mean I'm doing something wrong. It's kind of
Right.
a lot of,
Right.
it's like I shone, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's everything right with shining and being seen for that.
Well,
Great. But also like whoa, like, and also I can be human, and that real love is in the witnessing of what's really going on, you know, not the like only what's enough, you know, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, I feel it does. I also feel like a part of what you're speaking of is a bit what maybe what like like celebrity style. Like, what does it mean to come out of like, oh, like did this awareness of like that kind of princess energy or that kind of privilege happen because of what happened earlier in, you know, the this all breaking open in our community? Like, did that start for you then?
Well, inklings of it started before then. Like it started before the nut broke open. Um, but it was more like I was just irritated when I felt like I didn't have a place. Like I would get irritated when I would go into Yoga West here in Vancouver. I would get irritated because I wanted to be seen for who I am, not for who everybody else thought I was.
Mm,
And you know, it's like for the I didn't I wanted to be just I wanted to just be authentically me. And I had a couple experiences of really trying to offer, not at Yoga West here in Vancouver, but elsewhere, when I traveled and taught a little bit. I'm definitely not going to name names, but just I had a couple experiences of like rejection, of like allowing my authentic self to kind of come forward more, but then being like rejected in that and only wanting this kind of shining version of what they thought I was. And that was painful. And I kind of started getting uncomfortable, um, uncomfortable even with branding, and uncomfortable with just like, no, I don't want to, I want to be, I kept wanting to sink in further into myself, me, who I really am, even the uncomfortable parts and the painful parts and the parts that aren't, you know, um, up to par with being a Kundalini yogi, or up to par with being a Sikh, like what everyone thinks that I should feel, it's like, I'm just like, no, I don't. Being a Sikh and a Kundalini yogi was so tied in with my identity and my projection. I was like getting frustrated because I could tell there was something me who was underneath that, but I didn't really know because it was so woven in my
Yes.
whole life with my projection of a,
And you
yeah,
have the level of your mother already being a prominent musician, and
yes,
members and members of the community, and influential in the content, right? And
yeah,
so you within that, like what it means to grow up under that too,
yes,
right?
yes, you're right,
So,
definitely.
so I want to point that out, because before, quote, as you're calling it, the nut cracked within our own community, you're already feeling that, like as a recording artist, as a being in the world that is like
Mhm.
wanting to stretch beyond like these parameters of what you got as what your identity should look like, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
it's helpful for us to hear that that was brewing in you
it was, yes.
prior to it all breaking open.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was brewing, and it was hard for me because I didn't know exactly what was brewing or why it was brewing,
Mm.
or like what that feeling was. All I knew it was that it was uncomfortable and I was trying to find my way in it. So, yeah, you're totally definitely right on. There was that, being kind of under the umbrella of, you know, who my mom is and what she represents, and being her daughter.
Being her daughter, and then also what it represents in 3HO, and to be growing up in our community in general, like to branch out. I have no idea what that means, to branch out as a, what was brewing in you as a, as a recording artist. You have a public interface, and there's probably this huge private life. And I know even within the teacher context of Kundalini yoga, knowing from my dad and what I had to personally work through in terms of my
Mhm.
private public life stuff, that I knew I was carrying from my upbringing. I can't even imagine what that would be like to be a prominent musician like you, but to grow up under a large prominent musician called my mother,
Mhm.
that also is hugely influential in the creation of Kundalini yoga manuals and teacher
Mhm.
trainings, and is deeply involved in all of those runnings, because the level of responsibility as children that we grow up
Mhm.
with to uphold that image,
Mhm.
much less being a public interface image as a musician that
Yeah.
has Aquarian Sadhana CD, a So Perk CD. I mean, like, people are in love, like with what you're saying, the image of you as
Yeah.
this like perfect Sikh that's, I don't know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
recitating the mantras and calling in the perfect meditations and doing these 11, you're the spirit voyage this, and it's wonderful. But as an artist, and if this is brewing before all this breaks open, I'm trying to
Mhm.
give us some context, because if growing up in Vancouver was, quote, good, it's good
Mhm.
because of the positioning and the privilege of your family. You got to go to
Mhm.
Montessori schools, you got to have a,
Mhm.
a relatively diverse cultural context environment. That's wonderful. These things are wonderful. And then at some
Mhm.
point, you're obviously growing up in music from the time you're birthed. It's a
Mhm.
part of your whole livelihood. And then, it sounds like in your later years, you go to India, 10th, 11th, 12th.
Yes,
It sounds like that's your choice, because
it was my
now
choice. Yeah.
you're strong, you're already a Kundalini yoga teacher. So how
Mhm.
come that happened? Because you're connected to people that are influential in the teacher training
Mhm.
systems. That's not a
Well,
normal thing, right?
my mom was literally teaching the teacher training, and with this other wonderful woman, Dedham at the time, and they were teaching it, and I was 13 at the time, and I was listening to Sonatum's music, and she had come out with this beautiful album, Carry Us Home. And this track on there, the first track, the Golden Temple song, I remember listening to it. I had never really been into like practicing Kundalini yoga or meditating really at all. It was always like, my parents never pushed me into it either. It was just like the thing that they did and whatever. I was just on the periphery of, and I listened to that song, and I remember just falling in love with just the sacredness of the energy of the path that is Sikhi, and that is the energy of the Golden Temple, and the energy of like the real, like what I like to call medicine of this path that actually exists. It's so beautiful. And I fell in love with it, and I was just like, it felt like a tangible thing that just made me feel so good. And I was like, I want to take teacher training. Like, I want to dive deeper into that feeling. And so I did. And, I took teacher training, and it was great. And then, I decided, I was like in high school, it's public high school.
You're like 15?
Yeah, well, I was 13 when I took teacher training, and then when I was 14, I was still in that public high school. So 2 years in the public high school. And then I went to the DO when I was 15. Yeah, I decided, I just was like, because actually it's funny that you did the podcast with Hargobind, because he was one of, I kid you not, he was probably one of the, like, he himself was probably one of the main inspirations for me to go to MPA.
Wow.
Because I remember, like, they would do MPA night at solstice, and I was like 15 at that time, so I'd been seeing MPA night every year at solstice for years. But
okay, pause. Okay,
yes,
hold this story in your mind.
yes,
Don't forget.
yes.
But you're saying these things like we know what this is. So MPA
Okay.
night is, so every solstice. So basically, you grew up in Vancouver, but every summer solstice, you would go to New Mexico.
That's
so
right.
from as young as you can remember, you would go to New Mexico for summer solstice, but you're going to school back in Vancouver, and you're not going to school. There's not even the conversation for you to go to school earlier, just because you're being alive was a big enough thing in your being, right?
Yes.
To that not even come up. And so really it was like mantra, it was infusing in love. It was like this concept that 300%, it was just like pure love energy, and all of the support systems needed to make sure you're thriving.
Yes.
Got it. And so you're going to solstice though every year. This is a regular part of your life.
Oh yeah, and I loved solstice. I have such beautiful memories of going to New Mexico for the summer solstice. I mean, it lasted. We were probably always there for about 10 days every year, and I would like just meet. I would have friends, my peers that I would connect with, who I still adore.
From all over the world that
From
all get
all
to
over the
come
world.
meet and see. And so what I'm saying is, so then at solstice, one of the nights, MPA, which is MIri Piri Academy, would like do a presentation, right? To basically like a good marketing campaign a bit.
Yes.
To be like, wow, let me show you how amazing MIri Piri Academy is and how wonderful the students are. And they would do different things, right? As like demo things for that. And that's what you're referencing really fast here as MPA,
Yes, sorry.
right?
Yes, that's right.
MPA night.
Yes, yes.
So
Sorry.
everybody, that's what MPA night is. MPA night. MPA night is the little quick commercial for MIri Piri Academy that happens regularly at solstice and the yoga festival. Because personally, I remember seeing this at the yoga festival, and it was so beautiful. I was so impressed. I was like, wow, I really like, that's why I'm pausing there, because I distinctly remember this at the European Yoga Festival when I would watch the MIri Piri students do their presentations, whether it was the Bhangra or whether it was them speaking or whatever it was always well done, and I loved them. So keep going.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was so inspiring. I mean, you watch what these kids have learned at MPA, and of course, now we know everything. We're starting to hear all the other stuff that happened at MPA as well. But
Yes.
there really was this, like, just, I'd say, the discipline factor that you could like feel in what they, because like I know discipline, it has its two sides, of course, which we've learned can be so traumatic when overdone, the over discipline, of course. But there was also the beauty of what the discipline did offer, which I experienced when I went to MPA. But it's what struck me.
So yeah, you
um
were saying Hargobind, you obviously saw Hargobind at
yeah,
MPA,
at
and
MPA,
then
yes.
his presence or whatever he shared
Well,
influenced you enough to want to go.
it did, yeah. It was specifically actually his, I don't even remember if he ever said anything, I don't know, but it was, sorry, Herman. You may have said something, I don't remember it. But no, but it was specifically watching him do Gatka, and like some of the other kids that he was doing that were doing it at the time. But I remember he just had this way like of doing it, that it was like I just got this vibe that he was like remembering it from like lifetimes, like that he, it was just this like, watching him do it was like a spiritual experience for me.
Mm.
It felt like he just went right into the like zone of the both the art and the spirituality and the discipline of that martial practice, that it was like a dance that to me incorporated, I mean, as an artist myself, it incorporated this like spirituality, art, and discipline together, like like mystic spirituality, art, and discipline into this one like show. And it just was like, I was like, whatever that kid's smoking, I want some of that. And so, and it was like, and so, and I just, some of my friends that I had known I watch them, I knew them before, and then I would see them go to MPA and see them come back. And all of them sort of had this, like, I guess for better or for worse, kind of hardened core about them when they came back. And I witnessed it happen. And it was like, it was very appealing to me because I was like, whoa. Like, and, of course, I'm now hearing everyone's story, I'm like, oh God, some of that was just repression and you were just in pain. And I'm so sorry, I didn't know. But, now it's like so horrible. But to think that was there. But also there was just this like,
Mm.
they just kind of stood up straighter, and they were just kind of like, there was this kind of like boom, that they were the discipline had a positive effect as well. And it was like I was drawn to that, and I wanted some of that.
What I'll add is that the discipline, that it may have brought a positive projection, but not
Ah,
necessarily a positive effect.
mhm. Yeah, I like that.
And what we're
Yeah.
hearing more is that there's more to that, right? Like as we're as we're hearing more of the
Mm,
stories. I
yeah.
agree with you though 100% in terms of this. The projection was just profound. Like
Yes.
I
Yeah.
remember watching the MPA,
Mhm.
and this, there's excellence, there's always beauty and excellence to me,
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
so
well put. I love that. Yes.
but you know what's the story of creating these
Yeah.
personas of excellence, or these
Yeah.
projections of like this is the way it is, and yet the story behind the scenes is actually terror, or
Yes.
abuse on such levels that the silencing takes
Mhm.
over, and it becomes this stern front, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I recognize that being part of it as well. And but also I noticed, they're really, I feel like in like real genuine beautiful practice of meditation and yoga and martial art,
Yeah.
there is discipline that's required to, like you said, the excellence has beauty, the excellence. We all did learn discipline in order to achieve excellence, and we learn discipline for the purpose of meditation, discipline for the purpose of practice of yoga, discipline for the purpose of martial art, and even music or dance and art. It's like but I feel that that discipline went like far overboard
Mm.
in terms of like, and also covered up, you know, a lot of abuse and trauma that was happening underneath, of course. But I feel like there was a certain amount of beauty that was represented and that was, you know, that was visible in these in us
And still very much is, in my opinion, you know, it's still
mhm,
ever present and everywhere. And yet
mhm.
I what I find maybe more challenging for many of us is to see beyond that,
Oh,
because like,
totally, which is
whoa.
happening big time.
So tell us about
Mhm, yeah.
that. Like, what is it? What does this felt like? Like, obviously you've cut your hair.
Yes.
Not obviously, obviously people might be listening and they have no idea that you cut your hair. Let me take that back.
Yeah, yes,
Um,
yeah.
but like, what does
Mhm.
it mean for you? Like, give us some of that.
So, well, yeah, so okay, so you know, I went to India, I went to MPA. Um, I was, yeah, like I was touched by the discipline. I was impacted by the discipline. I was inspired by it before going. And then when I went, I was older, you know, I was 15. I wasn't like a little kid, like where you're just sent ripped from your parents and you go, and even just being there is like kind of traumatic because it's so different from everything you've been raised with. And like there was none of that for me because it was my, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, we have the context of who you were
Okay.
going to India. Like, you're
Yeah.
going there in a whole different status than most people, to be really
Right.
honest. You know,
Yeah, right.
so
Oh, sounds so
you know,
horrible. Yes,
it's
I understand.
true. I'm trying to
Yes.
give that. I mean, at that time, you maybe didn't classify yourself in that way, but now
Right.
we can look at it in
Yeah.
understanding that your experience of being over there is obviously heavily influenced by who you were by that time. Being
Yes, for
15,
sure.
you've done
Yes.
teacher training at 13. I mean,
Yeah.
we're no average kids growing up. You know, it's like I'm saying that to really, there's greatness in that. Like we're saying, there's
Right.
greatness in the discipline, and there's also not greatness in the over discipline of that, you know. But
Yes.
the
Yeah.
key thing in terms of our maturity at
Mhm.
13, at 15, you going over there, and also the who you were in the community going over at 15, I think that made a difference, no, in terms of your
Oh, for
experience.
sure. For sure. Yeah, it did. But you know, when I got there, I was still just, I mean, I knew a lot of kids there already. Like I knew a lot of from summer going to the summer solstice celebration in India. I mean, sorry, in New Mexico every year. I already knew a lot of the kids that I was joining at MIri Piri Academy
Yeah,
in
they're all
India.
your
I
friends.
already knew
You're
them. They're
joining,
my friends already.
yeah, this is like
Yeah,
you go actually joining your friends in.
my crew. I was like, oh my god, this is
Exactly.
fantastic. Hi, everybody. and
Awesome. Good. Give us that context. Yes.
yeah, so that was great. I loved just yeah connecting with my friends there and you know, I was already super into Kundalini yoga. So, like, being in a room full of a bunch of other kids my age who were meditating and practicing is something I had never actually done. And it was so beautiful to connect with this practice that I already felt passionately about because I feel like I really easily connected in with just the true essence medicine of it. You know, it was like, yes, it was my lifestyle growing up. Yes, it was, but it was also this very kind of mystical spiritual experience for me that was very real, you know, that was that was just not about the culture and not about, you know, who my parents were and not about any of that crap, like nothing. It
Mm.
was just the beauty of the mystical, like primordial spiritual essence of it that I adored, and which is why I connected with the art of Gurbani so much that I was like, wow, I can invoke this medicine, this like sacred medicine of this practice and have this spiritual experience while also, you know, bringing my artistic nature into the mix. Like, this is fantastic. And I went really deep into music, learning some classical Indian rag when I was there at MPA. It touched me so deeply for all those reasons. I remember just sitting there in class with our music teacher, just tears streaming down my face listening to him just teach us and sing. He would sing, you know, a mantra, a shabad, and I would just sit there, tears streaming down my face. And he would just like look at me and saw how much it touched me, and like would encourage that, and taught me such beautiful music. And it was so beautiful to have that experience with my peers there, to just be like, oh my God, like, wow, my peers are actually having their own spiritual experiences as well. And it was like, it was so fun, you know, for me to experience that. And but also, um you know, and we're also all teenagers, and you know, it's so interesting hearing from, you know, so many people who I was there with at the time, and you know, Hargobind being one of them, and other people that I've heard on the Zoom calls, you know, of everyone talking about their history. And it's like, wow, like I was there with them, but I had no idea that was what was going on be under the surface at the time. And one thing that I found, you know, that I've had to really unravel over the years was this idea that we were like these special saintly children, that were, you know, that what we were learning, we are learning to be sages of this world, and you know, we're so much better than everybody else out there. And these tools, you know, look at all the yoga students, look how thirsty they are for this practice, look how thirsty they are, they're just in pain, and this can help them. You're carrying this sacred medicine to give to them, they're all going to want it from you. It's your job, it's your mission to give it to them. So ride out there on your high horse as a, you know, as a shining radiant Khalsa person who is also carrying this sacred practice of Kundalini Yoga, and it is now your job to teach it and to distribute it and to shine your radiance onto all who come.
Yeah.
And that fed right into I'm like, well, hey, I've been raised as this princess in Vancouver. Sure, I guess that must be the way it is then. And, you know,
I've
and I
overcome the,
guess
yeah, yeah.
it's a lot, you know, and it's just like, okay, well then. But it was interesting because at the same time, I really did connect with the authenticity and sacredness of the essence of this practice. And I really did feel the true power of what it carries. And I don't mean specifically Kundalini Yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. I more mean just sacred practices in general that, you know, that kind of inner medicine vibration that runs through, the, you know, the Sikh lineage, the whole Sikh faith, you know, the Shabad Guru, you know, the essence of like the beauty of the mantra and the Shabad, you know, and it's a medicine, you know, and it's like it's in the core of the practice and the lineage of Sikhi. And also just in the I for me, I always felt like Kundalini Yoga was just like almost like a way of practicing yoga in order to integrate the medicine of the Shabad deeper into my being. That's the way I always related to it. It was like I felt like when I would practice Kundalini Yoga and then sing a mantra, it was like boom, it would go like way deeper into my body and into my being. And to me, it was a medicine practice. It was a humble practice. There's humility in that. That was, you know, that's just, and I still feel that way, that there's a beauty to the medicine and the essence of that practice. And it's just, you know, but it's it was the other stuff. It was the cultural, dark, twisty stuff that was under the surface. It was Yogi Bhajan with the whole like, there's the whole white privilege concept. There's the whole, or sorry, white supremacy concept. There's a whole like, you know, the whole like, oh my God, Yogi Bhajan, he's everything. He's like, you know, he's totally pure, and everyone who speaks against him is a slanderer. And, you know, Premka, oh, her name was like a dirty name, right? At the time, I remember. Oh yeah, she came, she came back, later, and she groveled, and she like, Yogi Bhajan took her back in. She apologized. She realized the error of her ways. She just wanted attention. She knew he never really did anything to her. She just wanted attention. And it was like, looking, I believed it. I believed it. I drank the Kool-Aid.
All your life until when?
Until her book came out. I mean, like, well, I kind of, what I did later, I kind of just, at the time I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. These people who I look up to, like Jagat Guru and Sarasat Simran, and like Guru Singh, and these were all my teachers at MPA. And by the way, I adore them as human beings. I still do. And I fully, you know, I don't think, Guru Singh, I know, doesn't believe that, certainly. And I know Jagat Guru doesn't either, and neither does Sarasat Simran, and nothing against them. At the time, we were all in a similar boat. Maybe they believed it at the time, and, their opinion was changed later. I have total compassion for that. But what I mean is, I learned, that's what I learned was the truth at the time, quote unquote, the truth at the time. It's like, you should believe this. This is what you should believe. That,
Okay, I think I'm a little confused. You're saying what you
oh,
were
sorry.
talking about in terms of the narrative that Premka's, get the groveling back, all those, just all the narratives that we heard about whether it was this or
Narratives.
that. So you're
Yeah.
saying you believed it all the way up. You personally believed that all the way up until you read the Premka book, which was what, February 2020?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Although it wasn't there's some gray area there in that I wouldn't say I believed that she was like to be horribly like crass and quote unquote attention seeking slut, which was basically what we were told, that everyone who accused Yogi Bhajan of sexual inappropriateness or just brought up any truth about any underlying corruption in 3HO,
Yeah.
you know, we were taught that anyone who brings that up is basically an attention-seeking slut or an attention-seeking arrogant slanderer. To
Yes.
be very crass and dramatic about
No,
it.
it's very true. So you're just saying that
Yeah.
what I hear you saying is that the permeating narrative, or the ethos, as I call it, through the community has always been that, and other
Yeah.
similar narratives of anybody who leads is a slut, or like a soul story around it, and it's not true for these reasons,
Yes. Yeah.
and all the things we've read in the AOB report and all that stuff.
But I wouldn't say that I believed that up until I read the book. When I say that there was gray area there, I more mean that I just didn't really know what to believe, and I just pushed it away.
Hmm.
I just kind of pushed the truth away and avoided it so that I could just keep my life a little more simple. Because if I were to believe all at that time, before the nut cracked, if I were to then believe all that, it would have meant that in my perception of my life, I didn't feel like I would have had any kind of a safety net to land on, of like, if I were to have looked at the truth and been like, oh shit, like Yogi Bhajan was what? That means like what corruption about my community? That means what corruption, and like is that's underlying, and basically the community and the spiritual global community that I've given my life to. If I had then suddenly had to either speak out or keep silent about it
Right.
before everything had come out about Yogi Bhajan, I don't know what that would have been too much for me.
Hmm.
So I think that, kind of subconsciously, I was just like, I'll just push that away for now. I just won't look at it, because if I do, then it would be too much. I would either have to speak out and be completely ostracized from my community, or, I can just live a lie. And I didn't want to have to face that decision. This is not consciously. I wasn't consciously
This is all
thinking this.
unconscious. This sounds like
Yes.
what you were describing earlier as the rumbling in you of
Yes.
wanting to shift identities, but not even
Yes.
knowing what that meant.
Exactly.
That if you actually
Exactly.
did that, you would be giving up your whole life support system and all of the indoctrination that comes with like, who am I if there's another truth here, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It was, and I wasn't, basically it would have been too much to have to, it's like, as soon as everything came out about Yogi Bhajan, I feel like everyone kind of banded together to create this like, hey, it's okay to talk now. And it kind of felt safer. And so it was like, as soon as it felt safer to actually look at everything, then I did. Um, and so, and that's when I was like, whoa, like, then it was like, whoa, like, why, why am I wearing a turban? Like, why am I, it was like, what am I representing here? It was kind of like, um, I was, and of course COVID hit too. So I stopped going to Yoga West and going to Gurdwara there and going to, which I had already started to be uncomfortable with because we were singing like Song of the Khalsa every weekend, right? And I was like, I can't sing this song even one more time. I can't sing. I can't sing if the Khalsa falls, there won't be a world at all. I just can't even, I can't even do it. And even back in like January, February before COVID hit, or even January, December, I was still like, I would go out of the room when Song of the Khalsa would be sung, or when that line would be sung, I would just not sing it because I was like, I can't even do it. And because so I was starting to be aware of it, but when everything came out about Yogi Bhajan, it was just a process of like just digging deeper, and like the hard part was that, and still kind of is, that like all the like real medicine of it, that kind of mystical primordial spirit feeling that I feel, can is so powerfully stimulated in within the practice of so many Kundalini practices, and also within the practice of Sikhi and the mantra and Shabad and everything. I still love that. Like, I'm like, no one can, it's like, I'm like, I don't, there's been a lot of talk about just, oh, like it's all BS or none of it's real. Or I'm like, I just don't like, I don't feel angry about that. I'm just like, it's not my experience. Like, I can't look at what I felt deep in my bones as like a real experience for me and say that that was fake. Like, that's not cool. That's me gaslighting myself, like that's not cool.
Sure. I mean,
And
you can't go against your own experience. My question is,
exactly.
my question is, how does seeing more and reading the stories and feeling people's experiences that have been silenced for so many decades and actually getting to the shadow, how has that rocked your lens of that experience? Because
Well,
there is an infusion of, you on one hand shared that narrative of like Yogi Bhajan's indoctrination of us as the supreme, and that it's our responsibility to bring it, like all of that doesn't go away because we're aware of it. It's all infused in the teachings. So like, how are you actually dealing with the gravity of darkness that hasn't ever been allowed to speak into your life before, you know?
well, sorry, my boys are down there and like one of them is crying. So like my attention is like,
Mom alert, mom alert.
yeah, mom alert. It's okay. My husband's with them, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But anyway, well,
Because you really painted a bit, like, I really understand what you mean by the primordial, that like, you're talking
yeah.
about essence of experience,
Mhm.
but even within that,
Oh yeah.
there's so much indoctrination, and it sounds
Oh yeah.
like the crack, like when it came out, it gave you permission to read things that you had been wanting to. And then how has that been for you? Like, what happened
Well,
when you read that stuff? Like, what,
well,
when
it
you read
was
people's stories and heard this for the first time and it broke your bubble?
well, it was a process. I'd say there wasn't like a moment. It was a process of the bubble being popped.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and it was, because as a human being, dealing with this my whole life, for the bubble to be popped on one moment, my psyche wouldn't allow that kind of, it was too much to pop all at one moment. So it was kind of a timed, I feel like my psyche, my like inner, spirit who loves me created a bit of a timed release, of the stuff coming, trickling into my awareness, and I kind of only bit off what I could chew, and it was like, well, at times it kind of felt like, I lost gravity. It was like just that my foundation had been rocked, and I just wanted to stand on something, and I didn't know what to stand on anymore. That the only thing, what I had worked my whole life to create as my foundation, and what I taught was my foundation of not only my emotional and kind of physical security and well-being, but also my identity, my security in my own identity had been Kundalini Yoga and Sikh Dharma. So it was like, if you exist to serve the mission of Kundalini Yoga and Sikh Dharma, whatever it's like, if you're feeling insecure, go do a meditation. If you don't know who you are is a soul who has been blessed by the Guru. That's who you are. And people would be like, oh yes, I love your music so much, and this is, you're such, it's all, people would literally tell me, oh, you should just say it's all the Guru's blessing. And, say it's just all the Guru's blessing. And it's just, it's like there's no goodness about you. All that's good is the Guru coming through you. And so I was taught that anything that's good about me, any love that I receive from anybody, is just how good I am at channeling the Guru, quote unquote. And that was my identity.
Wow.
So I felt very insecure. I felt very insecure, because suddenly it was like, what I had been taught was my identity. I suddenly found out the gravity of how that lie had hurt and abused so many people. That lie, essentially, because that lie, that like you are only good if you serve this mission, to me kind of represents the greater corruption. That's the whitewashing, that's the light washing. Like that, to me, it's just this, like, we all related to Yogi Bhajan that way, that he was great, not because of his madness in any way, but because, or not how, like, not, it wasn't personal, it was like the way he presented himself was as a spiritual channel. And that's the only value that's what he taught us was good. And he himself obviously was ashamed of whatever the hell was going on in his, like, he himself was obviously ashamed of what he was doing behind closed doors, because then otherwise he wouldn't be hiding it. He
But I
was
don't think
hiding
that's
it.
the case. I don't think narcissists are ashamed, actually. I don't think that's actually true. I don't think that's actually
Yeah, I
true.
guess you're right.
I
That's
think
true.
those that
You're right.
actually feel empathy feel ashamed, but I don't know if
Right.
that's
You're
true.
right. That's true. Yeah, fair enough. No, I agree with you. But I guess what it created this environment of shame for being human.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm not saying that being a raping narcissist is being human, just to clear the air on that. Certainly, like, what I mean is, like, oh, he was just being human, he was being a raping narcissist. No.
What I hear you talking about is you're dissecting, like, on one hand, this, and on another hand, like I feel like you're giving us a glimpse, like this is an active unwind for you.
Yes. Well, you asked how it felt, so I'm
Yeah,
describing how
yeah,
it
I love
felt.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And because it was like that Yogi Bhajan, seeing Yogi Bhajan as this like, he only exists to serve the mission, and that's what he taught us, to only exist to bring this medicine out to people. That's your only identity. And we related to him as, oh, that's his only identity too. And meanwhile, the hidden identity, the hidden part of what he was doing in his life, in his like actual personal human side, was horribly abusive and corrupt and like, ooh, just all of this horrible, dark, twisty crap.
Sadistic.
And
Sadistic.
it, sadistic, yes. And yes, like just horrendous,
Right.
monstrous, if you will.
Yep.
Horrible. And but what I'm saying is that like, the rejection of everything that he was doing, created an environment of rejection. It also, I guess I'll speak for myself, I feel
Yeah.
like it's a theme throughout our Dharma and our,
Yes.
but my experience, it created this, and I'm only saying that because I feel like, it's been echoed in what I've heard from everybody, but like or just around, but just that, that it creates this kind of environment of whatever we are that's not that is not okay. Whatever we are that's not serving the mission and purity and light and everything is actually not okay.
Right. That
Um,
becomes the permeating ethos. Right.
yes.
That like anything of that. So don't bring it here. Don't talk about it here. It's not safe here. Right. If it's
Mhm.
not of the mission and of the light, so to speak.
Yes, yes, exactly. And it's wrong. And it's like, oh, this kind of subtle, like, oh, that's not right. No, you were right. What you were speaking before when you were talking about the truth of Guru and Dharma and everything, that was correct. But when you kind of talked about this other thing that was not very light, that was kind of twisty, like you probably shouldn't talk about that. You probably shouldn't talk about that. And it's just like, or if I expressed a desire to, if I wanted to wear something that was kind of sexy, I
Yeah.
felt also weird wearing that with my turban. I was like, I feel like I can't wear. I was like, why am I? This is like clashing here. Like, I kind of want to wear this like sexy dress, but I'm not shaving my legs, and I have this turban on. And even if my legs weren't exposed and it was like a long maxi dress or something, but it felt like sensual, like it's connecting with my inner like feminine sensuality.
Yeah.
But then I'm wearing the turban, and I'm like, oh, this feels weird. It feels like I'm kind of disrespecting the sacredness of the mission that I'm supposed to be bringing. And
Mm.
that was the feeling that really was the kind of first hole in my little lifeboat, so to speak, where I was like, you know what? Why is it wrong that I should want to feel my own sensuality? Why is it wrong that I should want to be sexy? Why is it wrong that I should want to talk about, making my hair different, and like I want to pierce my ears. Why is that? Which I have done, by the way.
Woo,
But
woo, why don't you show us? Awesome. How did that feel? You just
it
had
was
your ears pierced for the first time when?
like in October was when I pierced my ears, but I cut my hair in like June.
Ah.
But
Tell
yes,
us the
yes,
feelings of these things for you.
it felt very freeing. And yeah, it was very freeing because it felt like before I was like, there was this kind of part of me that was the rumble that we were talking about before, like that I can't totally be me in all the facets of me when I was also representing this kind of mission oriented, service oriented person. And so do you see I'm kind of tying it together a bit in terms of like
Totally.
the experience of like being that, like, oh, riding on the white horse and like bring all this, like just bring the sacred medicine, because the thing was, I believed it's not the medicine that's wrong, it's the believing that we existed to serve that, and that I existed to serve that, and that my humanity wasn't also sacred in its own right because I am who I am. And that this beautiful sacred medicine that has been given as a gift to help me experience that more, not the other way around.
Yes, yes,
And
more, yeah.
yes, and so that's what it felt like. It felt this, like I had to go in and detangle what is me and what was that, like I only exist to serve the mission. Cutting hair is evil and wrong. Eating meat is, I still actually choose to be a vegetarian for the most part. I've started eating fish, which was also a very freeing moment, personally for me, just for my own, like, kind of
Choice. It's
free
called
choice.
free
Yes,
will.
choice.
That's what it is.
Yes,
For
exactly.
your own
Thank you.
free will, you get to
Yes,
experiment and make
yes,
choices and
yeah.
decide, does this work for me or not?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
That's
Yeah.
it. And then you may or may decide
Mhm.
yes or no, and you might do something for a while and then not, and then change, and then change again,
Exactly. But
change
it's
again.
my choice.
Yes,
Yeah. So, and
yours.
that's what it felt. That's what it felt like. I was like, well, and actually I did say that around the time. I'm like, it's not like whether doing it is good or bad. I'm trying to undo the good or bad conversation. I'm just like, it's not about good or bad. It's about being who I am. And
So
it's
do I
like,
want.
yeah. And it's like, even with, all my music and everything that I've given, I'm like, I feel still proud of it and I still feel good about it. And it still is me. And I was very authentic in my offering of it.
Oh,
And I'm like, and it's like not a but and I'm like, and I now have to kind of, it's been this process of like I said, the detangling of like, yes, and me. Not but I'm me and I'm me, So, and I really, the sensuality was the key.
mm,
And I know that that's been a real theme amongst a lot of women who have spoken. And of course, not to mention like the fact that what brought this up was women speaking about they literally being victimized by Yogi Bhajan, being raped and being everything, abused and manipulated and all the other horrendous things. I feel like the the inner feminine, kind of funny that the like we were all taught the car is like the princess, car is the lioness, right? And like the archetype of the lioness, I'm like, well, if you go into the like medicine of like what lioness is, it sure as hell is not light washing stuff. you know Being a lioness is just like, I am gonna be a huntress. I am like, it's like I am everything that I am, and I'm eating my life and everything that lionesses are not ashamed of their bodies. It's like, it's just like, I feel like there's this roaring of the feminine that is like, listen, you cannot say that humanness is dirty. Listen, like we've got wombs, we bleed freaking blood all over the place. If we didn't wear like something, the blood would be everywhere, guys. We grow babies in our wombs. We grow humans by having sex, and then we birth them. And
well,
it's just like,
how about even more than that? How about the clitoris is the only body part that's made for pleasure and no other reason but that?
oh, I
How
love that.
about the fact that the feminine teachings within 3HO have been disguised as like I feel like, and I'd like you to talk here because you've been close to the teachings per se. I feel like feminine teachings have kind of been a sugarcoat in our community for really a subjugation of the feminine. And it
Mhm.
somehow is shown up as a persona of our masculine energy, in order to even survive the experience of this level of training, if I might add, we took on a level of masculine persona. I know I did. And I had to really do what you're talking about, is get my pleasure back, get my sexuality back, get connected to that. And that's been a long ass process personally. But
I
specifically
so love
on the
that.
point of the teachings,
Well,
it's like it's do you know what I'm saying?
I do know, I totally know what you're saying. Absolutely. And I have felt a lot of that in my life. And to me, there's a real, I tend to like to deal in archetypes. That's why I've gotten really into astrology, which has been such a gift during this time. I love it. It's been so fantastic. It's been really helping me through it. It's been something for me to focus on so that I can kind of like not go insane. And I feel that there's a lot of beauty that was brought forth in the quote unquote teachings with the of on femininity from Yogi Bhajan. I actually, my mom, Yogi Bhajan, asked my mom to start a, Khalsa ladies camp in Vancouver. And he always did his one every year, like a women's camp in New Mexico, every year after solstice, where all the women would come for like weeks at a time. That's a whole other story. But then he asked my mom to create one that was shorter, or just said create one, whatever. In Vancouver, my mom made it shorter. She's like, I have children myself. They're not going to get away for like freaking 8 weeks. Are you kidding me? Like, she made it like 5 days long or whatever. And she herself has so much incredible divine feminine mysticism. Like, she was always reading like Women Who Run with the Wolves, and the Red Tent, and like all of these beautiful divine feminine texts, and just like she was in it. She created this women's camp and taught a lot of the teachings that Yogi Bhajan had taught on the feminine. And those camps with her are some of the most beautiful, incredibly empowering memories that I have. Because the energy that was created at that time, it wasn't about the doctrine, about what she was saying. For me, I just spent like the whole women's camp in my bathing suit. Like it was like the ocean was right there, and I was swimming in the ocean, and we'd dance, and we'd like give each other foot massages. And it was very just women loving each other and showing up for each other and practicing yoga and meditation together. It was very priestessy, if you will. And I learned a lot of beauty from that. It's like, yes, there is the whole kind of like, to me, I like to think of it as the priestess archetype, that we learned about the priestess archetype, which is very sacred, which is very mission based. It's like that the sacredness of the feminine as a channel as a bringer of sacred medicine, as just
Right,
using her beauty.
that was the veneer I feel like we got.
That,
And we
yeah,
had a lot of
totally.
context of like birthing and certain things, but that's like the overarching kind of veneer. And then
Yes.
depending on the teacher, like your mom particularly might have got into the Red Tent and really into the cycles and teaching, but as an overall teaching,
Oh, for sure, as
that's
an
not
overall
what's
teaching.
happening every
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm trying to get to that
okay.
via kind of my own experience of it,
Okay.
which is that I I learned about the priestess archetype via Yogi Bhajan's teaching, like the turban and the chuni and the grace,
Grace,
it's
right?
like the grace, which I know has become a bit of a like repressive word, and I totally agree with you.
I don't
And I feel that,
at all. Like,
oh, well, I don't think it actually is, but I just mean that it became that way. Be graceful,
right.
it's like,
What I'm hearing you say a lot, Nirinjan, is you're jumping into what we heard and learned, and then your experience. And I'm wanting to hear more about your experience
experience of it, yeah.
it's more helpful for us to
Yes, sure,
feel
sure.
you, if that makes sense, as
Yeah,
opposed
totally.
to, I feel like it's really easy to kind of go into an overarching way of understanding the way I'm
Right.
registering stuff. But if we can, does that, if you can keep
Yeah.
landed in your experience, it
Okay.
helps us,
Okay. Well,
like
that's the
just a
thing is
minute
that,
ago, we talked about how you're just now awakening to getting in touch with your sexuality and
yes.
permission of wearing
Yeah.
sexy dresses, having
Mhm.
no turban, and what
Yeah.
that means. So, what I'm hearing you do is paint a picture of the archetype of the priestess as a
Yes.
context that gives us a lens that supports why Yogi Bhajan taught us about grace and the feminine as a channel for knowledge.
Mhm.
I want to know how that lands in your body to have heard
Yes.
that your whole life and
Yeah.
then to read about sadistic abuse of friends and women you know
Yes.
and have the
Horrible.
exact
Yes.
opposite be what he practiced
Yes.
and
Well,
how that shows up for you, you know?
okay. Well, I mean, I totally hear that. It's just that in my experience of it,
Yeah,
it was mostly, I experienced that his teachings
yeah,
taught what he taught, but through my mom. My mom was the one who taught me that stuff.
yeah.
And she didn't teach it the way he did. She taught it her way. And so to me, I know that the general kind of curriculum, if you will, came from him, but I learned it from my mom. And my mom taught it in a really different way. And my mom wasn't raping people, he was. And so, like, you know, it, it wasn't as destructive for me because I didn't really learn directly from him so much. It was more like it was more like the way that my mom taught the curriculum that he provided, which was a lot more grounded and a lot more integrated into actually being a woman. And so it wasn't, huh?
Because she was a woman.
Exactly. And she also is a very wise soul, of course.
Mm.
And so I really and so what I'm saying is that the feeling that I was my primary exposure to Yogi Bhajan's teachings on women, quote unquote, was at this women's camp that my mom put on. And she taught that kind of curriculum that he gave in her way. And so my experience in my body growing up there was actually one of grounded freedom. um, I loved being around women and just like I remember just I loved being in the like showers and being able to just get naked and all together and like all the women being naked around each other and have just experience the beauty of our own body and how okay that is. And there were so many women that were just these women who had come to this camp were not like 3HO community women for the most part. It was women who just loved yoga and meditation. And I would hear from them and, we'd laugh and, like just go into the ocean. And I remember we'd like chant mantras on like a cliff by the ocean. And then it would be like a full moon and we'd go skinny dipping like in the ocean. So it was actually Yogi Bhajan's teachings on women and were kind of like a bit removed from the way I learned them from my mom. And it kind of was an experience of the integration of that priestess archetype and of the woman sensual body archetype, the like lover, beautiful, like our bodies, accepting our bodies for the way that they are and loving ourselves. They were actually somewhat integrated in my experience.
Okay.
And so I
So
I
what's happening now for you
so
then?
what happened
Different
so
than
what
that.
happened
Like,
well what happened was I was that was when I was young. But as I started to become more sexually mature in my body, it was more like that was at that point I was going to MPA, right? Because I was like 13 when I started taking teacher training, and then I went to MPA. And at that point, it was like, okay, well, now you know, as a woman, you need to be quote unquote graceful. And that means that you need to, you know, cover up your whole body and, you know, always wear white and wear your turban. And it's like, it's almost like my sensuality and sexuality and everything were only for behind closed doors. Everything in front of closed doors was for being the priestess archetype. So in my childhood, I have this memory of the priestess and like Venusian kind of archetype, the like real woman archetype as being combined. But as I grew up into sexual maturity, they started to become separated.
Mm.
And that's when I started feeling weird. Like I wanted to connect with my sensuality and my sexuality and kind of almost like be embodied like how I felt when I was a child. But I felt weird doing it with the turban on, or I didn't feel like there was space for that, for me to be able to be both as a sexually mature adult woman.
Mm.
And so I was just like, well, if I literally wrote this thing right before I cut my hair, where I was just like, I felt like as if there was this kind of inner Venus inside me, Venus being like the goddess of love and beauty and romanticness and just all things like clitoris, right? You know? And so I kind of felt like someone had put a post-it note on her forehead, which was like my inner Venus, right? Put a post-it note on her forehead saying, "This is ego." And it was like, oh, so Venus, so all my like feminine, like sexual, sensual power that I hold in me, that's actually ego? Really? That's not what I feel like I know to be true from my childhood. You know, I'm like, this is sacred medicine that is intrinsically woven in. There's no, to me, like I've experienced both, being so embodied and being so like being embodied, while like having the practice of Kundalini yoga help me to feel more embodied. Not just this like, I feel like after I was sexually mature, it kind of became this like out of body thing. But you know, when I was younger, I was like, no, I know how these things meet. They meet beautifully, you know, but they're not taught to me. You know, it's like largely the way it was represented by Yogi Bhajan, and
The
the way
whole,
that
as a whole, right?
as a whole, like global, it's like they're not taught to me. But I knew that they could. I knew that they could, but I still like. I was like, so anyway. But I was like, there's the post-it on Venus's forehead, my inner Venus's forehead, saying this is ego, and I was like, ah, you can't call my inner Venus ego. You know what? I'm going to let her speak for the first time. She's, you know, since I was a child, she hasn't gotten to speak. She hasn't gotten to talk about, you know, she hasn't gotten to talk about what she actually wants. You know, I'm going to let her talk for once. And she's saying that she wants to cut her hair. So she's going to do that. You know what? Like, you know, and I was just like, I even felt like, yeah, I was like, she wants to cut her hair. So I let her, you know, me. And she wants to pierce her ears now. You know, she also wants to get a side shave. You know,
Okay.
that's also what she wants. She wants a little edge, you know, like I'm not even just going to cut my hair. I want to shave a part of my head because that's what my inner Venus would like. Thank you very much. And, you know, and so I did it. And it was just like, then I wore like these like, you know, summer, I shaved my legs as well. And I was like, now I can wear these dresses and feel like this is what I want to do. You know, nothing about what's good or bad. You know, I also have like absolutely zero judgment and full 150% support for any women who want to keep their hair. And if that is their choice of empowerment, if that's what Venus wants, do it, you know? But my Venus wanted to express herself in another way. And so I listened to her. And I have not yet found the integration of the priestess archetype and my inner Venus archetype to come back to totally merge again, in terms of like teaching. I haven't taught Kundalini yoga since I cut my hair. I haven't really performed anywhere, sung any more mantra music, because I haven't yet found a way to feel comfortable in that environment, in the environment of, you know, the kind of Kundalini yoga Sikh environment, which is like, you're either a priestess outside or you're a Venus inside. You can't be both on the outside. I haven't yet. I do feel that there is a way back in my own way, and I do have faith that I will find that, in the way that feels good to me. But I haven't quite found that yet, and I'm still on that journey. Yet, I must say, my practice of astrology, like learning about astrology and starting the, basically, like I said, astrology-based life coaching, like really using astrology to help do all this deep digging and helping other people to do the same with their own, with the tool of astrology. It's helped me feel a lot more empowered, like that there's something that I can do that makes me feel like I'm actually doing something useful and helpful and of value to people and of value to myself that is not associated with the Sikh and Kundalini Yoga world. It's like something that I found on my own to do. That's like when I chose me and I chose Venus and I chose everything that I want, I also found astrology and decided that I really like doing that and that works and it's really helpful to other people also. And so it's been really an empowering, it's been a process of detangling so as to find my own empowerment, but also very specifically not to reject everything that I've been given, because you see, it was some of my most beautiful experiences of my own femininity in my body were when I was a child, and those two, the technology of Kundalini yoga and yoga in general, and meditation and and mantra and Sikh practices, they're all interwoven in my experience of my being. I don't want to separate them. It gave me so much. So it's really a process of unwinding and integration, as opposed to doing this or doing that. I'm giving it all some space. I'm giving it all some space so I can figure out, as I live my life, how to integrate it all in a good way.
I want to really just honor you in the willful choices you're making, and also just the framework you're offering yourself as almost like a form of self-care to navigate things to be true for who you are. And like I hear that kind of like ringing so loud, like your unique experience of your earliest childhood has a different resonance than maybe the community ethos as a totality that might
Yes.
add a lot more rigidity and masculine subjugation of the feminine. That especially if maybe the director of their ashram was a male archetype that was copying the formula of more the Yogi Bhajan energy directly, as opposed to, I don't know your mom personally. I know I've listened to you and her on mantra CDs and stuff, but I do know that I just want to honor that as your lived experience, because it's such an important lens you're offering here, that you had this kind of like unique kind of earth-bodied experience of you in your body. And then you described to us how, like, when you went to MPA and as you kind of came into your sexuality and kind of like into, if I might add, the larger ethos of the community instead of just your nuclear family princess experience growing up with your amazing household and all that came with that. That you started noticing the separation that maybe a lot of other stories are representing more fully, in terms of like a sense of like repression and abuse that maybe you didn't even notice existed until all this came forth.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, and the thing is, I did notice it, I did feel it, but I kind of pushed it away.
Yeah, like you were saying, pushing it away to make it okay, because the mission was more important than what you were feeling and needing.
Exactly.
And you painted that really well for us today too. And I want to mirror that back and just honor you for that, because I think it's more than a lot of us got that. We all got that mission energy, but as a daughter of someone on a particular mission of that through mantra and connection to, you know, all of that represents. You served as an extra level of channel of
Right.
mission, as the deliverer of the mantras
Right.
for the community. So I
Yeah, it
got
was,
that growing up, and I wasn't a songstress and anything in this capacity. So I just, again, I'm honoring you here to say, to choose you,
mhm.
to make some of these choices is just a beautiful thing to witness. And
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it can
Also,
change, and you might choose new things, and it might
yeah,
just, and I think all that's beautiful in all the
thank you.
expressions.
Thank you. And I also want to add that there's a distinctly another level of that there's this in me, and also I sense, and I know that in the community as a whole, there's been this fear of the shadow, right? Fear of the shadow of of, and when I say shadow, I just mean like the real non-light washed feelings, the uncomfortable conversations, the vulnerability, the,
The anger,
things that, the what? The
anger,
anger,
the rage, the
absolutely.
feelings that you're like, I'm not allowed to feel this. What do I do with it?
Yes, what do I do with it? Exactly. And I must say that there's been a distinct thing that's been happening ever since, even before the nut cracked, where remember I was like, well, I want people to feel, I don't want like to interact with people as the princess songstress, right? Like I want to interact with people as me. I want to have uncomfortable conversations. I've always been all about the uncomfortable conversations, right? It's I'm like, oh, I found myself like there's a whole like Premka Facebook group that was like during, I'm sure it still exists, I'm not a member of that group anymore, but that when it all came out, there's like on the like Premka Facebook group that existed, the Pamela
It's
Whitley,
beyond the cage now.
Beyond the Cage, that's what,
And
okay,
it's
oh, Beyond
still
the Cage,
there, and
that's
it's
what,
still supporting a lot of people in its ways.
oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, I left just because anyway,
So
I had some bad experiences on there, but that always happens on Facebook. But anyway, what I was going to say is that it was helpful. That there was a choice. I made the choice to dive in to there was a choice happening. It's like either I could choose the light washing and choose to ignore and choose to stay in my cushy 300% love kind of situation, which I was slowly realizing was not true.
you're saying back in March, right? Like back in
Yeah,
March when,
back in March. It was like, well, and even before that, in the fall before that, it was like I was slowly realizing that like the kind of golden light washed princess thing was like really not the whole story. Not that it wasn't true, actually, that's incorrect. It was true, but it was not the whole story.
not complete.
Not complete. And it was just like, you know what, I need to hear the whole story. And that was so helpful reading Pamela's book and hearing also people's everyone's true stories and all the uncomfortable conversations. It's like, you know what, I choose all of this real, dark, painful but real stuff any day over all of the light washing. And that it's like please make me feel uncomfortable, because that's better than the lie, and it's just like and also I feel like even with, it's like the sacred, we are sacred humans, and if we want to claim to offer anything sacred, we have to be able to hold the whole picture, the darkness and the light, the shadow and everything within us, in order to offer in order to offer this medicine in a way that's actually real. And so I'm like, well, what the hell are we doing if we're not if we're not having uncomfortable conversations? None of it is anything without also eating up the darkness. You know what I mean? By eating it up, I mean like not segregating your vegetables and your dessert on your plate. It's like eat the whole damn thing.
Yeah, and I see
Yeah.
you taking those steps in your life. Like, I want to make sure I'm not glorifying, or we're not glorifying somebody choosing to cut their hair or not. Like, any choice
Oh,
someone
certainly
makes
not.
is wonderful. And what I think I really want to point out here is that it's not about, like you're saying, the right or wrong. It's about
No.
you letting more of you show up and be a part of a conversation with yourself, to say,
Yes.
why, what does this mean to me? How do I feel about this? How does this feel inside me? And having
Mhm.
more of your expressions. And
Yeah.
that's valid, because growing up the way we grew up, we didn't get choices. We were a part of something where it was just the way it is. And
Yeah.
and not only that, but then there was a lot of shame and cultural abuse as a totality for making
Mhm.
choices outside of that zone.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
how has that been for you and your family? Like, how have your parents taken to you choosing, and your children choosing to cut their hair and make that choice now, and to just let more of your own Venus, as you're describing it, show up in your life? Like, how is that showing up in your real everyday relationships? Because
Well, my husband and my children were all totally on the same page. Totally, everything's on the same page, and my husband and I have been both seeing this amazing therapist, and really diving deep, and she's helping us to
mm,
all of the detangle the twist, the programming and the indoctrination from what's real. That's really the name of the game for this whole process. It's not what's right or wrong, it's what's real for you. And
right.
it's changing the tables of like, I exist to serve the mission, or I exist in my life to be who I am. And these tools that I've given in this technology is there to serve me in that and to empower me in that. And however that looks for anybody else is perfectly exactly as it needs to be for them. But yeah, with my family, it's been totally great. With my parents, it was a little rough with them when I cut my hair. It was painful for them. I wouldn't say they agree with my choices. I don't get the feeling that they really understand completely,
Mm.
which is okay, but I still see them a lot. We still talk all the time. They love me. They've accepted me for everything that I do, and they support me, and they're getting excited about the astrology work that I'm doing, and sending, being like, hey, oh yeah, my daughter, she's doing that, and it's like they're
How,
really still really supportive of me.
how
Yeah.
have your mom and dad, and father handled the nut cracking, as you said, of our community?
Oh, it's been excruciatingly painful for them, of course. Really hard. How can it not be? But
They've read it,
they're
they're paying attention, like,
oh yeah, they've read it, they're paying attention. They are definitely not quote unquote deniers of it all.
okay.
They totally know that it all took place. They accept it all as truth, and they basically, my mom, I mean, yeah, both of them are still just like, you know, they have felt the benefit of what Kundalini yoga as a practice has offered so many people, and how they feel on a daily basis how just genuinely and authentically helpful it is for for human beings who have come and to receive, to just do it, to practice it and to feel it in their body. They see how helpful it is, and they're like, why would we? They have not stopped teaching Kundalini yoga, and that's primarily what they do. And it's been really hard for them, of course, to just, because that he was their personal teacher, right? And like, oh, it's been so painful, but at the same time they're like, well, you know actually my mom has a fantastic way of looking at it. What my mom said is, I was talking to another friend of mine who was like, oh, but as like someone who's a quote unquote feminist, like, which my mom is, like, as someone who like stands for women and for women's rights, for women's bodies and for women's beauty, and for like everything, for feminine empowerment, I'll say, there, it's like, well, how could you possibly continue practicing this yoga after knowing that your teacher was a rapist and a sadistic narcissistic, like, monster, but, and my mom's like, you know what? This yoga has been like this practice, everything that he taught for me has been empowering and healing and helpful and not repressive at all. I was repressed before. This helped me get unrepressed.
Mhm.
And she's like, and I've seen it be so helpful for everyone else. And this is what I've devoted my life to. This is my practice. This is my life's path. This is how I have chosen to live. This was my choice. And she says, this is so great. She's like, and I will not let any man and his stupid decisions take that away from me.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I'm like, yeah. So it's like, to me, that's just like, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, you do you. If you want to keep teaching Kundalini yoga, yeah, like that's your thing, you
Mm.
do it then. And she's not raping anybody. She's not teaching any of these repressive things. I mean, maybe it's coming through, it's unfortunate. She's a human being. Maybe some of the repressive, quote teachings, quote unquote, are coming through. And I certainly wouldn't stand to say that that's impossible or that that's never happened, because I'm sure it has. And I'm sure people have had negative experiences, whatever, and that's fine. But overall, I'm really proud of her, and I'm really proud of my dad, and just their courage to just face the truth and also continue doing what they feel is right and empowering for them and everyone that they're teaching. So
Yeah,
proud of
and
them.
just do the best they can, you're right. To
Yeah.
are they are I don't even want to ask that question actually. I don't want to ask about them. I want to ask about how you feel in terms of like the teachings going forward. Because on one level there's this essence or medicine that happens in the transformation of a person within their own experience, but the actual process of how teacher training works within our community
Oh, yeah.
is spread with certain levels of
Yeah.
plenty of indoctrination in it. So as much as your mom has
Yeah.
a unique expression, how do you feel about that? Because how does
I
teaching
feel,
go forward
I,
really? I don't know.
yeah, I feel that there's a lot that needs to change there. Um, and I feel that there's a lot that needs to change there in the way that teacher training is offered, and exactly as you said it, the kind of programming that kind of exists subtly, like the teacher student like thing, and the kind of hierarchy of teacher student that's wrought with just inherent, like, it's like at the same time the boundaries are really important and the ethics are really important, but there's also this other side effect of like the teacher is above the student, and when you're a teacher you have students, and then that's it, like there's a hierarchy and they look up to you and they're down there. There's this separation, this inequality,
Yeah,
which I feel simultaneously is really important to create an ethical boundary, of course, but also in the hierarchy, I feel that hierarchy can very quickly become a problem, um, in terms of just the way we worshipped Yogi Bhajan. It's kind of like, well, everyone who's a Kundalini yoga teacher and chants Om Namo Gurudev Namo and gets on stage, they are now a channel of the golden chain, and now they are higher, and it's like whoa,
like
whoa, whoa,
that's
guys.
permeated. You feel like that's permeated through the teachings as kind of a regular essence, is
uh,
what you're saying?
just, I would say, the kind of attitude of hierarchy, of like the kind of light washing and being like, that I'm not a man, I'm not a woman, I'm not a person, I'm not myself, I'm a teacher, right? The teacher's oath.
Right.
While simultaneously, I think that's beautiful, because there is a kind of like, there's that priest/priestess archetype again, where you being a divine channel, right? But at the same time, it's like, well, let's not go overboard with that and reject our humanity and reject our actual need as humans to actually have friends. Like, does that mean that, like, if you're a teacher in a community, that you can just never have friends again? Because if you taught everyone Kundalini Yoga, they're then your students, and you can never again have friends. It's just like, it's just like, come on, guys, let's just also look at our humanness and be human, and like not put everybody up on a pedestal, and not put the quote unquote teachings up on this pedestal as their Kundalini yoga is the best thing ever since sliced bread, and all the other yogas are below it, and blah 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 blah.
Well, and also that therapy is not needed. All you need to do is
Oh
X
yeah.
and
Oh,
X. That's a big
that
thing
too.
there.
Exactly.
But how about all of the
Yeah.
quotes? Like everything from my understanding when I did teacher training, as well as went to festivals, yoga festival, or whether it's solstice, it's the hierarchy is a part of the ethos of the training network. So like
Oh,
that's a very
exactly.
complex thing to
Exactly.
detangle. Like we're
Exactly.
talking about our personal detanglement, but to detangle some of the infusion of what I'm calling predatory behaviors in the teachings
Mhm, mhm,
is
mhm.
very complex, because while there might be some essence of excellent medicine, as you're calling it, there's
Yeah.
also a web of
Yeah. Yes.
hierarchy and
Oh.
appropriation and like quote
Mhm.
unquote of dehumanization and kind of escaping.
Yeah.
And like, what do we do
Oh.
with that? And how do
Oh
we,
God. I think it needs to be changed. I mean, it needs to be figured out. It needs to be shifted. It does. But I just feel like it's gonna take time. I just feel like it's gotta be like one thing at a time, and that's also one other reason why I haven't felt like I want to
that you can do
get
that?
back into it. Yeah, because I'm like, getting back into it means just accepting and representing all of that other corrupted ethos that does exist,
Right.
that I don't agree with, and I refuse to represent that. I don't want to represent that. That's another reason why I haven't gotten back into it.
Yeah.
And I that does need to shift. And what I mean, I do know a lot of people who are finding their own way within that, that are kind of not participating in that all that corruption, uh, all that kind of that negative cultural ethos, as you're calling. I like that word, ethos. It's really
It
good.
is helpful.
Yes, it is. I feel like there are a lot of people who are starting to find their own way, not in that. So it's not black and white. It's not like it's either this or it's
Right.
nothing. It's like, well, the gray area is forming. Lots of people are kind of doing it their own way and feeling out how they want to offer Kundalini yoga just in a way that feels with it's not like "Ugh," and all that stuff. And it does need to change. And as far as I'm concerned, it will. I just don't think that maybe I'm just being overly twinkly eyed about it, but I feel like
We're good at that.
yes, yes, we are good at that. But I
Let's
mean,
give credit
I
where
guess
credit's due.
what?
Let's give credit where credit's due. We're
Yeah,
really good at
we're really good at being
that.
twinkly eyed
We
about
hold
stuff.
the light well.
Yes, that we do, I must say. But and there is a beauty to that.
And it's amazing.
There is a beauty to that, because there's a beauty in like that, that I really feel that I hear. It's like, why did all of us show up on these Zoom calls to tell our stories to this first generation people? Why? Because there's so much love there. It wasn't just to be heard. I felt like there was this underlying love there, that many of us actually were impacted positively by the medicine that was offered, and like impacted positively by the relationships that we had with so many beautiful, loving, wonderful first generation people. We're like, guys, it's like we are holding the light in a way that we're like, guys, we believe in you. We actually love it. And so we love the essence of it, and who you are, and of what you offer. We believe that it can pull through. And I still believe that. But
Will
personally,
love you right there in all of the heavy places and all the
uh-huh,
darkest places. And it's like most of us
yes,
haven't had the experience of being witnessed in our darkest and most non-together place and be totally unconditionally loved, right? So to
yeah,
show up in that place is like, oh my gosh, how, like you said, how can you be an Indian, have a completely different experience, and somebody had a horrific abuse story, and
Mhm.
you were friends the whole time? Like, this
Mhm.
happened among so many
Mhm.
people that were born
Mhm.
in our community because we weren't allowed to talk about things that weren't in the light. And here we want to say we love you, and you're seen and you're held and you're heard, and it's important.
It is, yeah. And but also, I mean, totally. Oh my God, that's so important. And also, I just feel this beauty of, a lot of us second generation folks, even everyone who has been like horrifically abused and had this horrible trauma, even so much of those people have shown up to tell their story, but not just to be heard and seen, yes, largely, but also I feel out of the love even for their parents and their like family of people. It's like even people who like left ages ago, who had horrifically traumatic experiences 20 years ago and they left, they're coming back to tell their story out of love for everyone who is still in it. you
Profound.
know
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. And so, like you're saying, we're good at that, we're good at holding the light. It's like, yeah, we are. It's because we like hold out hope. We're holding out hope for the love of, because I feel that there's this knowledge that we know, there's this feeling that, like, I mean, I'm like, I know the medicine, so much of that like inner medicine is beautiful. I don't want to see that go away. I don't want to see like all these first generation beautiful people who are trying their best, who like screwed up and like accidentally abused people, or not accidentally, there's also a lot of that. But, like, I don't want to see them
Right,
like
or
humiliated
complicit, right,
or,
or complicit through their own ignorance,
yes,
or their own
complicit.
experience of not paying attention. And it's like being able to hold everybody in exactly their experience, that there
Yes.
is this abundance of love, and love and light, and yet
Yeah.
we're also willing to now talk about the things we've never been able to, and hold all of us.
We're holding the life and the death. We're holding the light and the dark. We're holding the pain and the pleasure, which are really all, it's all one thing that's called life, and it's all one thing that's called love, and we're learning to hold it all together. And I just feel that the things, like one thing that I learned, one fantastic thing that I learned from, actually, that my therapist said recently, she's like, the thing is, when a lot of love comes to be present, then all the things that are not love float to the surface to be dealt with. And so it's like, as
When
far
it's
as I'm
safe,
concerned,
when it starts.
when it's safe. And I feel like it finally got to that point where the trauma and all the like this stuff that was like that we weren't, all the kind of all the pain came to the surface to join the love, the whole, the love hole,
Mm.
if you will. It's like everything, and that love hole encompasses like all of the pain and all of the pleasure and all of the ecstasy and all of the like horrible perverted stories that happened, all to kind of like encompass one big thing that is life, that we now have to move forward with. And we're talking about the ethos, the negative kind of cultural ethos. That's kind of what I mean, that as we, now that we've brought all this to the surface, I just don't think that that can exist, really. Like, as long as everything is being pushed forward, I think the stuff that's not working is, I feel like, is just going to fall away. I feel like it's not going to
Well,
be able to survive.
I think that the complexity of it is that not everybody's in agreement with, quote, what's not working. Not
Well,
everybody
not yet.
on the, yeah, exactly. So it's like
Well,
being willing to create more spaces where we're bringing forth the
mm,
conversations. And
oh yeah.
um it is, but for me, as a one who taught Kundalini yoga, and really,
Mhm.
like you, like really loved my lineage, like in a way I was just
Mhm.
like, oh, and there was a
Yeah.
part of me that had really dissected so much of stuff that wasn't in resonance with me, but ultimately I still felt this responsibility to uphold my lineage and to not
Yeah.
disrespect the teachings. And even though I
Yeah.
didn't in my everyday life wear a turban, I had already cut my hair. There were so many
Mm,
levels. When I taught,
yeah.
I almost felt it was like a mission responsibility to
Yeah.
represent in a certain way, to
Mhm.
uphold something. And that doesn't just dissipate easily. And I know
Yeah. It's a
how
sense
it
of
works.
responsibility.
And
Yeah.
it's huge. And so like what we're seeing, I think the reason I'm saying this is because you've painted a very beautiful picture on some ways of how much, quote, Kundalini yoga is a medicine and how much it's helped. But I also really want to give listeners just the 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 looming understanding that it's so important that we're dissecting what that means, and we're reconciling that within ourselves,
Mhm.
because as a machine of a teacher training system,
Yeah.
they're more likely to push it forward without dissecting it fully,
Mhm.
because it's a money-making endeavor within our own selves,
Mhm.
our ability to show up and teach. If we're going to do that authentically, we've got to really be reconciling these things in ourselves and not just
Oh,
see it
yeah.
as a body of work. We can't just
Yeah.
see it as a body of work in and of itself. We have to be willing to break this stuff apart and say,
Yeah.
"Eh,
Yeah. You
eh."
know what? I totally agree with you. Totally on the same page. And honestly, I think a lot of people feel like there are some people like in our community that really feel a calling to just like get in the trenches and uh, kind of fix what's wrong and like really bring it not back and bring it into a new frequency that is working, that is not that, all the repression, that's not the hierarchy, that's not the abuse, that's not all the other words that you mentioned so well. I loved all the words that you used. They're so right on. But
Well, that's
and I,
inspiring to
but
me, because I don't know that that's true. Like, I'm hearing you say that.
oh, there are totally so many people who want to fix that and who want to fix it. Oh yeah, and I feel that it will be, but the problem is the first gens are the baby boomers. They are the baby boomers. Anyone who listens to this who knows astrology, they're the like Pluto and Leo people. They're the like they're the star. It's like they what they represent is just like, this is what we did. We already broke out of a shell. Now we're doing it.
Mm,
It's hard to like, they don't want to let go of what they have found to work. The
mm.
way that they have found for it to work is what they're doing. And we're like, it can still grow more. They're like, we're done growing with that. It's like, we're done changing. This is good enough. It's fine. It works. It's stable. Let's just keep doing it. And it's just like, personally, I don't have the desire or energy to fight them on that.
Me
And
neither.
like, yeah. And speaking, I mean, with my parents, like, I love that they're offering what they're offering. I don't agree with like all the ways, the things that you mentioned, the kind of negative parts of it that I do feel are still, represented, but they're doing their best, right? But I know that if I were to go in and try it, like, if I were to say, which I have no desire to do, by the way, but if I were to go in and be like, guys, step aside, I'm now going to figure out a way, to do this that feels like it kind of doesn't do any of that stuff, they would totally not go for any of that. Like, I know that the way, like, I've really embraced Native American medicine ceremony and praying with this like sacred pipe that I have, and I like love it, and it's such a beautiful practice for me, and they're totally not into it at all. And it's just, and I'm like, that's fine. It's just like, I'm not going to go in and try and fight for something. Like, I'm like, listen, guys, like, I don't agree with it, but I don't have the energy to fight you on it. I don't have the energy to like try and convince you of all the things that aren't working. It's just like, I, as of right now, I'm like, I'm going to take space from it. And I mean,
Fair enough.
It's a little like wimpy, sure, but I don't care. I'm like, this is not my
Not
priority.
wimpy at all. But I do want to acknowledge that that might have been your training growing up.
Yes, it definitely is. Yeah, thank you for saying that. It is definitely, you don't want to fight for the mission. I'm like, you know what? I just don't.
I just want to do what I am resonant to do. I want
You know, you're so right. It's exactly, yeah. You're right. It's not wimpy. It's
I want to
just me
thank
making
you.
a choice.
I want to
Yeah.
thank you because, we don't have to get into the whole team. I want to just validate that you don't have to want to get into that conversation because neither do I. And thank you for a lens into the fact that there are young, an infusion of people that are wanting to make change. And, I just hold that in the light. I really do, because
Mhm.
I feel like if those kinds of conversations start happening, there is really excellence within this body of work that can be
Yeah.
saved per se. But
Yeah,
the
sure.
complexity of doing all that, I don't even want to talk
Oh,
the 10-foot pole.
yeah, right. It's like, no thanks. Someone else can do that. Good job, guys.
But I love
Yeah.
you all. No. So anyway, that's not our conversation, but thank you for giving us a piercing lens into that from, your lived experience and
Mhm.
all of it. I just think it's awesome, it's like to be exercising free will and to be feeling what that means and to be discovering yourself. Like I'm witnessing you as like a discoverer of your own being almost.
Definitely. I would agree with that.
So tell us about your song as we move into wrapping up. Um, why you chose this song.
Oh, yeah. Well, you might want to listen to they might want to listen to the whole thing kind of on their own later. But yeah, I was watching this show, Dear White People, on Netflix. Some of you might, yeah, it was so good. I really enjoyed it. Super eye-opening and really touched me. And in one of the scenes, this song was playing. It was right after, I think his name was Reggie or something. He had that like scene in this like where he was like a cop pulled a gun on him like in a party. And anyway, it was like later he was with the main character in the room and they played this song and it was like so impactful for me. I was like, what is that song? Oh my God. And I looked it up and I listened to it. And I listened to it like probably like 20 times over and over again. I was just crying. And it was so cathartic for me because it just, to me, I mean, I think that the song, I don't actually, I haven't researched the history of the song, but to me, I feel like it's more about like being a Black person in society. It's more about like that kind of journey of race. But I wasn't listening to it necessarily with that. I mean, I was actually in the beginning. It really gave me a hit of it was like a hit of reality, like what it means to be a human being on this planet, like with all the pain, like just feeling, even watching that show when I watched that documentary 13 and feeling just the human pain of what Black people have had to endure. And just what they still have to endure and just feeling the reality of that and just being hit with it. And I guess it hit in with my own experience of coming into reality, and taking the wool out from behind my eyes and like the pure human catharsis of embracing the pain and seeing through the veil of you know of like society's opinions or 3HO's opinions or just the misogyny and the racism and everything that exists in society, like seeing through it and embracing the pain and embracing the shadow side of everything and just coming into being human. To me, that's what this song makes me feel, and I love it. I listen to it all the time. I'm like, oh right, being alive, right, oh yeah.
Oh, right. Being in this body.
Yeah.
So before we cut to your song, which for everybody, we did start an Uncomfortable Conversations Spotify playlist. So when you can't listen to the whole song on this episode, you get to go and listen to this playlist and you can actually listen to the song in its entirety, which we know our guests only bring songs that have some meaning and life story for them. So be sure to check that out. What do you want to leave listeners with? Anything you want to wrap up with?
uh uh I guess I would just say thank you for listening, for one thing. I know we've been going for a while. If you made it this far, thank you. And
It's been lovely.
just what?
It's been lovely.
It's good. I'm glad. Me too. It's been so lovely talking to you, Ganeshan. And I'd say just, I guess to leave listeners with a, a desire for myself, and that kind of a twofold thing, that I just to state to myself that I have a desire to forever keep facing my own shadow and getting to be better of a human being in every way that I possibly can. And I want to, and in that, by feeling the whole picture and facing the things that are hard. And I just, would love to see, it makes me so happy to see that in however anyone else is doing that in their life, that I'm right there with you and I support you and in that process. And also just a request for forgiveness for myself and for anybody else, as all of us, as myself and for anyone who moves through this process, that recognizing that we're all human beings facing our own pain and our own crap, and we all feel the same human feelings, and it's not easier for anybody or harder for anybody. All the feelings are all the same feelings that we're having to face, and to just forgive each other for missteps, and just to please forgive me for any time I misspoke or anything that I have not yet uncovered. Because I'm also dealing with my own version of the hard feelings that are hard to face, and in my own way. And just please forgive me if any of my words, are hurtful or just miss the mark in any way. And trying my best.
Nirinjan, it's such a privilege to be allowed into your process. You're not coming here saying you've got it figured out, but you're giving us a glimpse into what it means to not have any of it figured out, and just to kind of feel yourself along the way. And I appreciate that, because it's a really vulnerable thing to do. When we don't know what we're actually, we're just doing the best we, and it's just beautiful. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. I also feel so honored to be on this podcast with you and to talk with you. And I really love what you're doing. I think it's just so important. I'm so glad you're doing it. Yeah. And you really have a beautiful talent for just doing it well in an organized fashion, really listening and creating a really great synopsis of what you've heard. It's very good. You're very good at what you
do. I appreciate that. It's for me, it's just quite a service, because I can't. Our community means so much to me. The people of our community, and there's this interesting bond that takes place that I've noticed in my own sensory body as I've healed. That no matter what generation, no matter whether I've met somebody or not, there's this weird interconnectivity that I love. And yet in the pain and the hardness and the beauty and all of it, I learn and grow. And it is therapy. It's a part of my self-care to support others in this process. And what a thing,
It's so beautiful. I can totally understand that. I really understand that. And it's so helpful to everyone involved.
Yes. And may that ripple out to many more ears and bodies and cells. So without further ado, I want to share your song. And again, for copyright purposes, we won't be playing so much, but feel free to listen to the podcast playlist.
And I see you running into the world with your bright yellow jacket. You look lost. I see you running into the world with your bright yellow jacket. You look lost. Girl like you ain't supposed to know that the water's broken.
And this has been another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga Community. I'm your host, Guru Nishan. I want to thank our guest for today, Nirinjan. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Totally my pleasure.
And again, if you want to be in touch with me, you can connect more with me at gurunishan.com. If you're interested in sharing your story, please reach out to me at gurunishan.com.